Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today, we are more than pleased to have as our guest, John Oglesby, Certified Athletic Administrator and Associate Director at the Utah High School Activities Association. John, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Hutch. Thanks for having me on the program. Real pleasure.
Thanks for being on. Let's start. I know a little bit of your history, but I want you to share with our listeners your journey through the tiny area of Moapa Valley in Nevada. So share some of your growing up, how you played, some Little League sports, that type of thing, in a less populated area of the United States.
Yeah, well, you're right about that. I grew up in rural southern Nevada. It was interesting. I was an hour to St. George going north or an hour to Vegas going south. So it was a great place for me and my family. I was born in Salt Lake, and then we moved there in the early 90s and grew up there. Moapa Valley High School was probably about the size of, I would say, some of our larger 2A, smaller 3A schools, maybe comparable to like a South Summit in size.
Okay.
So, but in the desert, not in the Camas Valley mountains there in the desert. So,
Yeah.
But it was a great place to grow up. To be honest, it's kind of unique that I went into athletics because I was not a great athlete by any chance. Growing up as a kid, I was a good golfer, but wasn't really a great overall athlete, but I loved sports and was really fortunate to find a niche there, kind of coming up through the system as a broadcaster and as a sports writer. And I would even help run some of our games, kind of like an administrator almost as a student. And that's what led me from there. And then ended up getting an undergraduate degree at Dixie State and was a TV sports broadcaster there and did radio and a bunch of different stuff, where none other than the great Jeff Clough was my boss at Dixie State.
Wow.
And then from there went up to Weber State and got my master's degree and just been a really blessed journey for me. And been so blessed in what I've been able to experience and do and the people that have really blessed me.
When did you graduate from high school?
So I graduated from high school in 2009.
Okay, 2009. So let me backtrack a little. You mentioned so you were broadcasting and doing radio of obviously Moapa Valley when you were in high school. Explain how that works.
So the way that started is really, so my start of my junior year, I was in our TV every high school's got like a TV production class that does announcements, right? Well, I had the idea of like, let's do a sports show. Let's have a daily, we're on a block schedule. So my days, I had a daily we had a sports show where we talked about what was going on and we would do interviews and we did a set redesign and we had our own corner, the MVTV Sports Corner. And then what we started to do on Fridays in the football season was whether I had our TV production class that Friday or not, we ended up doing MVTV game days where we would bring on our head football coach or one of the captains or somebody, and we would do interviews about the game. And it was a lot of fun. And then I started doing public address announcing and eventually got to where I traveled. I mean, everywhere we went, our football team, I traveled. I mean, Reno, Delta, we played a game against Delta. I mean, Spring Creek, Nevada, all the way down games in Vegas. It was just a lot of fun.
Well, tell me, who was in your league then?
So we had Virgin Valley, which is there in Mesquite. We had Boulder City, Pahrump Valley over there, and then Faith Lutheran, which was a private Christian school kind of in the Summerlin area of Las Vegas. And that was a great league. And Moapa, a great football brand, really a strong overall high school program in Nevada for a lot of years. And so I was fortunate to be a part of that and broadcast games. We were 2-0 in football state championship games. I broadcasted. We were 0-1 in basketball state games. But it was just a lot of fun to get to be a part of that experience.
So were you the play-by-play, or were you the color analyst, or were you both? Were you out there on your own?
So I was the play-by-play announcer, and our athletic director at the time, who was actually a really good friend of mine, still is, Matt Messer. And then the current AD at Moapa, Dallas Larson. Those guys were my color commentators that I worked with. So it was really a fun experience. And again, we would travel around the state, go different places, and call games. And I again just was blessed to have that opportunity as a student to do those types of things.
I know they alternate basketball between the Lawler Arena and the Owens Arena, north-south. Do they do the same with football, or is football always in the Vegas area?
Football's kind of bounced around. They try to go back north and south. There's such a split in Nevada in size. They this year did all their state championship games at Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders are. And I know that our peers over in Nevada are hopeful that experience of those kids playing in an NFL stadium for a state championship continues. I know we love our state championships at our big college venues. But as far as I know, there's only one pirate themed team that's undefeated in Allegiant Stadium, and that's the Moapa Valley Pirates, as far as I know.
There you go. I like it. So do you suppose they had to have, the Nevada Activity Association had to have stuck a sweet deal to get those games? Because I can't imagine the rent on that place. I mean, I know what we pay up in the University of Utah, and
well, I think a lot of it in our business, and you would know this, Hutch, is it's about having great partners. There's a great appeal to whether it's college campuses, whether it's professional groups having community involved in their venue. A lot of times, particularly with the NFL coming to the state of Nevada and Las Vegas, there was a lot of public tax dollars that were funneled into making that happen. And a lot of times the quid pro quo of that is your facility, as much as possible, needs to find a way to be available for public events. And, credit to Donnie Nelson and some of those folks over in Nevada that were able to cultivate that relationship with the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's a positive thing that I hope continues for them, just like I know we're so appreciative of our partners up at the University of Utah and Weber State, BYU, SUU, wherever we are, UVU. We're very appreciative of those people that see the value in having kids in high school compete at those larger venues.
Absolutely. Have you been to a Raiders game at Allegiant?
I have not yet. Hoping to here at some point, but just haven't yet. I've had a few different opportunities to go down and just haven't been able to make it happen. So one day it'll happen. So
share with our listeners some of the mentors and leaders you had in your life that made a difference to you, both growing up and professionally once you got out of school.
Boy, we could take a whole podcast doing just this. I'll start with some of the great mentors that I had growing up as a kid, particularly, and I'll focus mainly on high school. There were tons and tons, but I'll focus on some of the high school folks. My own coach, Brent Lewis. Coach was our football coach at Moapa, but he was also our golf coach. He helped me really get a start in the business as an announcer because he convinced our administration that I was worthy of doing something like this. But Louis, and he's still the coach at Moapa, just won his 4th state title just about a month ago. I learned so much from him about just toughness, being a competitor. Matt Messer, who was the AD and longtime volleyball coach at Moapa. I learned so much from Mess about just kindness and how to treat people, how to be really fair with people. Dallas Larson, who's the AD at Moapa now, I learned a lot from him about excitement, how to be excited about kids and about opportunities. Probably the other one is Jeff Keel. Jeff Keel was a longtime assistant coach at Moapa. Some people in our southern part of southern Utah may know that name. I learned a lot from Coach about perseverance through adversity, different things he went through, always showed up. Never saw the guy take a sick day. I learned a lot from that. When I got into college, I mean, I probably have no greater professional mentor than Jeff Clough. And I mean, I'll just say that flat out. Jeff gave me an opportunity at Dixie State. He's taught me a lot of lessons. Sometimes he's had to teach them to me the hard way because I had no doubt, being a young guy, all young people know everything, and we realize how little we know as we get older, unfortunately. But Jeff had to put up with a lot of that, but stuck by me, is still stuck by me, and taught me so much about the greatest thing I've learned from Jeff. And I think any of our EDs in the state of Utah can learn this from watching how Jeff works with our officials, has been that sometimes you just got to find a way to make it work. It's got to work. So you got to find a way. And that involves being flexible, and that involves sometimes taking some risks on some people, and hoping that they'll fulfill that and make a good opportunity out of it. So Jeff, I can't say enough about Jeff. I worked in college sports at the Big Sky Conference. Probably my main mentor there was our deputy commissioner at the time, who's become a just tremendously close personal friend, Ron Lockery. I learned a lot from Ron about how to be a servant leader. Ron was a deputy commissioner of a D1 conference, but that guy would, anytime there was physical labor, anything involved at one of our championship events, he would just jump in and do it. And he never elevated himself above anybody. And it made him a great guy to work for. It's made him a great friend. Just a tremendous, tremendous person. And then in my job at the High School Activities Association now, I have so many mentors, so many people that are constantly making a positive impact on me. All my coworkers, I learn so much from them every day. I've learned a lot about having a real grace and a real poise about you from Jan. I've learned a lot about how to be able to connect with people from Brennan. I've learned a lot about organization and attention to detail from Rob. And again, the way I see Jeff juggle what he does every day in managing officials around the state, it's just, you can't help but work in this environment and become a better person. And in my case, sometimes in spite of myself, I've learned a lot here. And so that's a long list, and I could probably add 40 or 50 other people, but those are a few of the highlighted people for sure.
Thank you for sharing. Let's shift gears a minute now, and let's share with our audience your biggest failure and what you learned from it.
I would say probably my biggest failure in my life has just been, and I can't even point to specific examples, but my biggest failure collectively, if you were to look at different things, has just not always been very good at listening. And I think many of you watching the podcast could probably attest to an experience where maybe I've just been, hey, maybe I haven't listened as well as I should have. Maybe I've been too prideful. Maybe for whatever reasons, and that impacts decisions you make. That impacts sometimes information you process. But the thing that I've learned from that consistently has been that by humbling ourselves, by not necessarily backing down from what is right or what we know, but by simply putting an emphasis on really trying to empathize and understand people, you can come out with really positive experiences. And I'm not a perfect practicer of that. I don't think any of us are in every circumstance of our life. But in listening and in trying to really find out where other people are at, even when we're talking about tough things and we have tough things that we have to do, at least there's a good mutual respect there where people can understand where you're coming from. And I failed at that a lot, and failed a lot at it with people that I'm really close with and that I really care about. But thanks to their grace, I've been able to push forward through that and hopefully learn those lessons throughout the rest of my life.
That's some great wisdom. Thanks for sharing. Let's cut to the chase now. Johnny Thunder. Now, I'm familiar with that, but I need you to share with our audience where that moniker, if that's the correct name, where did Johnny Thunder come from?
Well, it came from Moapa Valley High School. And it came from our longtime vice principal there, who was a successful volleyball coach. He became the principal at Moapa after I left. His name was Rod Adams. Rod, I had a very loud voice when I announce. Jeff Clough in our office calls it my alter ego. And so from that, when you put a microphone here, it's almost, it is a little bit, and the voice carries a little bit extra. It's got a couple extra quarters in the machine there. And so the voice was so loud, and Rod Adams made a comment, wow, Johnny's voice really seems to thunder. And it kind of came from that, Johnny Thunder. And it was a cool thing in high school. And nobody likes talking about, I was great back in high school, but it became the sports show that I talked about became the Johnny Thunder Sports Show. And we had t-shirts that we give away that said I was a guest on the Johnny Thunder Sports Show. And it just was kind of a cool vibe. And for a lot of people, when you go to high school, you have a nickname that kind of dies with you when you leave high school. But my nickname carried on to college. And I had that nickname in college. There's friends of mine from college that, will still call me Johnny Thunder or JT or what have you. And so it's something that's stuck. Like a lot of nicknames, there's a lot of positive attributes associated with it. There's a few negative, but I'm proud to be known as Johnny Thunder, and it's been a fun ride getting to play him on TV.
Well, I can't think of a negative, and I appreciate what you said about nicknames, because
you have one that has stuck. Oh, the test.
Mine was back when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Youth conference, Little League youth conference, but it was obviously the not youth conference that it is now.
Yeah.
And to show you how early it was, Highland was red, East was blue, South was yellow, and Holiday, which was Olympus Skyline, was green.
There you go.
But I can share this, and I know some people have heard it, but so you get your gear from the coach.
Yeah.
And of course, it's my first year playing. He says, okay, now put tape across your helmet and write your name. You write your last name there so I can tell your names and I can start learning your names. But of course, at 7 years old, I was already predisposed to not listening to anybody. So I show up for practice the next day and everybody's got their names on their helmets, but oh, not me. And the coach looks over and he says, hey, Hutch, you come over here. Because right on the front of my helmet, it said Hutch from the helmet manufacturer. And so I like the nicknames, and I like Johnny Thunder. So thanks for sharing that.
And I like Hutch. That's a fitting one there. So
thank you. Tell us what took you from the Big Sky then, and you decided, well, I'm going to throw my hat into the ring at UHSAA and I'm going to apply. So how did that process work?
Yeah, so at the Big Sky Conference, I had a tremendous job there, and I loved my time there. I tell people all the time, I was there 2 years, but it felt like I experienced 30 years of things, and it was just tremendous memories, friends, whatever. But the one thing there is I was primarily in a sports information role, and I still have the passion for that. I love that, but the way our conference was, there wasn't a lot of room for me to really move and have a lot of upward mobility. And I was looking for a different challenge. I was looking for an experience where I could be more of a sport administrator, where I could have a wider breadth of roles, where I could do different things. And the high school activities job opened up. I knew Rob. I knew Jeff. Obviously, Jeff was one of my mentors, one of my really good friends. Mm-hmm. And so I put my name in for it. There was a lot of really qualified people that applied, but I was blessed to be selected to be here at the same time as Jan and Brennan, and God's been good to me, and this has been the place where I was supposed to be for this period of my life, and it's been really remarkable here, the things we've been able to be a part of.
I'm sure that media savvy was a big part in helping you get the job, because having such a great experience and having all that broadcast, plus coming from a conference, a D1 conference. That's got to help. So
Yeah, I'd like to think that I came into the job knowing a good amount of things. On the flip side of the coin, though, it also meant there was a lot that I didn't know, and sometimes still struggle to know, because I've never worked in a high school. I don't understand those day-to-day processes, and I think that is a positive, because I think anytime where everybody's the same in an organization, you get an institutional inertia, which kind of pushes things forward. And sometimes you need a little bit of rub, which generally comes from an outsider, to sometimes disrupt the idea of we've always done this way, or this is how we always do stuff. And I think that's been a positive. I think the negative is again, you have to work extra hard. And I've struggled with that at times to have that empathy, to understand that, okay, what you're used to from the college world isn't the same as the high school world, and it'll never be the same. And so finding that balance has been a great reward and a great challenge, but ultimately it's been a great opportunity of growth for me.
Share with our audience. I know you spent time, as we spoke about earlier, broadcasting in high school. So you at least got to work with some ADs, although you weren't really familiar with their job. And of course, now you've had 2 or 3 years at the UHSAA, or is it 4 maybe?
Actually 5. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's 5.
So.
Okay. So you've had 5 years. So talk about the role of athletic administrator and athletic director in high school, and how it's changed, how you think it's changed from your time in high school. And now that you've got 5 years in at the association, how it's changed just in the 5 years you've been there.
Well, I think it's changed in the facts that the expectations keep rising. And I think that's a good thing. But I think also, again, there can be an institutional inertia where I think in athletic administration, there's always been growth and there's always been development. But for a long time, the job was, I would say, fairly consistent year to year for a good stretch of time. And the little things that we've seen added over time have given way to big things. The importance now, I think, to be an AD is you have to have a background or a competency in technology. I don't think you can do the job without at least understanding a good amount about how to use computers and how to be very tech literate. Because Arbiter, Max Preps, Register My Athlete, those are 3 essential systems that I guarantee every AD in the UIAAA and every AD nationally is in some version of those 3 sites every day. Every day you're using them. So you have to be tech literate in order to be able to manage and keep up with the workflow. I think also what's become more difficult over time for ADs is communicating, because it used to be you had a staff meeting, you went over things for the week, you made assignments, and there you go. That's how it was. Mm-hmm. Well, now things are changing so much faster and things are developing so much faster. We communicate so much more quickly with people than we did before. And that's a positive, because we're able to get information out quicker. But it's also a negative because things change around us so much faster than what we planned on before. And so I think that's added to the level of expectation of really organization as well as crisis management that ADs have to handle. It's a great job, and a lot of our folks do a tremendous job, but there is no doubt that this job has changed dramatically in the last 10 years and even the last 5 years that I've been in this office.
Oh, no question. I think about when I retired, which would have been June of 2013, it's before you came on, but
yeah,
I remember my filing cabinets off to the right of my desk that just had 2 drawers for the seniors, 2 for the juniors, 2 for the sophomores, and 2 for the freshmen. And that was just the eligibility packet, which had, at Jordan, it had 6 or 7 forms, anti-hazing agreement, parent, blah, 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 physical, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that's not now all done in line. And so I hear exactly what you're saying. And but the thing I want to point out, I'm sure you agree, is I catch some ADs, I don't want to say relying too much on the technology, but they think, well, everything's online, so it's good, but you still have to check every kid, particularly a kid that comes in from out of state or a kid that comes in from out of the area. Yes, the 400 kids you got coming back that were there last year, sure, there's stuff you have to have, but those new kids, you still got to check.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they slip through the cracks. They just think, well, that's a register my ad. We got it covered. And I just think it's remember that we still need to go there.
I think a lot of people have been coaches, right, Hutch? Most of our ADs have gone from coaching. Well, anytime as a coach, what do coaches spend as much time doing as anything? Practice planning. Really, they spend more time practice planning if they're a good coach than game coaching. And the attention to detail and how you build practice is immense. It has to be on point, because if not, you're wasting valuable time that you have with kids. And I think the same thing is said, in my opinion, for our really good ADs. They are meticulous about their process. Doesn't mean everything goes perfect. It's life. It's never going to go perfect.
Exactly.
But the people who scrutinize their process on a daily, hourly, sometimes minute by minute basis, those are the people that I see being most successful. And those are the people that minimize some of those errors that we just talked about. Are they going to happen to everybody at some point? Unfortunately, they will, because it's life. We're not perfect. But it's very easy for my seat to see the people that are very focused on their process and the people that are kind of just hoping that stuff turns out good.
No. Well said. Thank you for sharing that. Talk to our listeners now about your journey with the UHSAA, and of course, you've become involved with the UIAAA with the ADs, and of course, involved in our conference. So, share some memories and stories about your journey during the last 5 years.
Well, the number one thing that I'll take away from the journey over the last 5 years is the relationships, and the relationships are so big in all that we do. And there's so many great people that I've been able to meet. That's my favorite part of this job, is the sheer depth of relationships that we're able to have with people across the state. I'll give you, on a daily basis, I'll talk to everybody from college athletic directors to, pro sports people, to parents, to reporters, to ADs, to superintendents. And you think about all those people along the way, and all those people have a story, and they all have a past, and they all have experiences that they're bringing into your interpersonal communication experience. And it's fun. It's fun to get to interact with all those people. This office, I would say, in the time that I've been here over the last 5 years, has seen more dramatic changes than probably at any time in its history. And I think that's because of the really unique chemistry that our office has right now. I think you look at the leaders that we have, Rob, Jeff, Jan, Brennan, you look at people like that. Those are people that are coming from places of great experience, great investment in our mission as an organization. And that's allowed us to enact some really big things that I think have been positive for our state. I think the RPI, controversial at the time, still generates a good amount of conversation. It's been positive for our state. It's created a better postseason experience and made things more competitive for kids. I think the way that you saw Rob and Jan and Jeff and Brennan navigate the association through COVID was unprecedented. It's a reason why, whether it's through the NFHS or through the NIAAA, when we go to conferences, we're some of the most sought after people by our peers. And why is that? Well, it's not because we're so much better than everybody else, but we were able to collaboratively work together as a state to find a way to allow kids to play as much as they possibly could in a safe environment. And that was a daily, the stress and the tension and the stakes they've never been higher. But I felt so much faith every single day that we could find a way to do what was best for kids. And that was because of the people that we have together in this office, and our people out in our schools, our superintendents, our folks throughout the state. So I know that might be a little bit broader of an answer, but the journey the last few years has just been incredible. And I know you'll know this reference, Hutch, as the great Paul Anka once said, memories are time that we borrow. And I'm going to have memories forever of the people and the sacrifices that they've made so kids throughout this state could have as good an experience as possible in their high school years.
Let me follow up with two things. One, just a comment on so it would have been 15, 16 months ago, where Utah was one of the only ones in the West that actually put sports on. Tell me your take on this, because my impression was, obviously it was hard and you had the testing and all that COVID stuff. But it seemed to me like everybody, when I say everybody, I'm talking outside the athletes, I'm talking about parents, community, seemed to be a little bit more grateful. It seemed to me, and I could be wrong, that a year ago, things were much better, even though we were in the midst of this horrible COVID thing, just because everyone didn't take it for granted and realized what we were giving to the kids. What's your take on that?
I think there was an attitude of gratitude, and I'm disappointed to say I feel like we've reverted really.
And that's what I was going to say. We've gone back. We've gone back to pre-COVID now, where some of the things that happened we just don't need.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, I think there was an attitude of gratitude. If people were just happy to see kids get to experience things again, and we've seen regression in that. And that's really unfortunate that we've seen that, because I think so many of us, through so many different segments of our lives, we're hoping to see that gratitude of being able to see a friend face to face, of sharing a hug, giving a handshake, seeing somebody smile. I think we were all hoping that the pure joy and really human experience of that is something that would sustain us. And that innocence of that is melted away again. But I still see, in spite of what is growing tension, growing anger, growing unrest amongst a lot of people, not only in our state, but around the country and around the world, I still on a daily basis see people that are trying every single day to let one more person know that they matter, and to let one more person know that they have a friend. And I think that's a mission that's been part of the education field forever. And I hope will be a part of the education field forever. Hutch, you and I just were taping this, but we were recently at a service commemorating one of our great UHSAA and UIAAA figures. That's Jim Hill, who was a longtime Davis School District administrator. And the message that we got from Jim's life was very much that people matter, and that we need to be grateful for the opportunity to serve people. And I think if we all carried that message, I can't imagine how positive things could get again for people in our business.
Absolutely. Well said. And thanks for sharing that. The other follow-up I had was our coaches in general, not specifically, are they over the, and of course, I'm not a head coach anymore, and it's been years and years, but when you get to the state tournament, you got to beat the best sooner or later. So to me anyway, the RPI makes a whole lot of sense. And I've always been a proponent. I know a lot of people are, but some people are, oh, this or that, or we should have had a better draw in the first round. And I'm going, hey, but it's a tournament. You got to play everybody. Yeah. So our coaches in general, both male and female, getting better about it, or we still have some holdouts, I guess.
I think overall, people have definitely adjusted to this is the new normal. of how sports is conducted in Utah. I think the one thing that's hard as a human being in general is we're very focused on how things affect us. And any sports administrator will tell you, our AD friends at home who are watching, who's the favorite coach you have in your building? Well, it's the coach that isn't just concerned about their program only, right? Mm-hmm. And that's from our perspective. Our favorite coaches we work with are the coaches that are focused on the global experience for kids and programs around the state. Doesn't mean they don't advocate for their kids, doesn't mean they don't have strong opinions, and doesn't mean sometimes that they may not disagree with things that are going on, but they consciously try to look at the bigger picture. And I think when looking at the bigger picture, a lot of coaches, and we have some really bright people in our state who are coaches and leading kids, but I think as you look at the bigger picture, you see pretty quickly how the way we're doing things has created a more competitive bracket throughout our state tournaments, and has really led to more attention and more energy around high school sports and high school playoffs, which that's what we want. We want the kids to have a lot of attention and a lot of excitement around their successes.
Sure. I know you've answered part of this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. And
okay.
We've talked about the COVID success and the RPI success, but I'm wondering if you have some other successes as the associate director that stick out to you in the 5 years you've been there that have made a positive change in the lives of our athletes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to be a part of a lot of them, but most of them have really been accomplished by people that are outside of me. I wish I could take more credit for stuff, but as I look back, it's a lot of other people. There's been some things that we've done. Our record books, we've completely gone in and rejuvenated, added stuff to our record books, made it more easy to experience for fans and history buffs like you and I that are going back to look at stuff. But who's that? Is that John Oglesby? Well, no, that's Kurt Pettengill. I look at the additions of sports that we've had. Girls wrestling, adding girls wrestling has been a massive addition to provide opportunities for women in our state to have an additional sport to compete in the winter. I've been at the office while we've done that, but where does that credit lie? Well, that credit lies with Brennan Jackson. I've looked at the changes that we've seen that have been made in providing opportunities for women and providing opportunities for groups of kids that maybe weren't represented before to have a chance to see their sport get added. Well, I've been a part of that, but who's been the real person that's made that happen? Well, that's Jan Whitaker. And that's the thing, being in this office, I've been able to see and play a part in a lot of successful experiences that we've had as an office. But again, in a lot of ways, I don't know that I've been the crux of that. I've been able to see a lot of other people have great ideas, be successful, and also how they've handled success as well in those great ideas. And it will always be very, very pleased with what our staff has accomplished in the last 5 years here. And doesn't mean we get everything right, doesn't mean we do everything right. But I think around the state, all of us would say that we're in a much more progressive, much more student-focused, much more agile operating environment today than we were 5 years ago. And I think that's a testament to everyone working together to make things better.
Well said. What's the favorite part of your job?
I could say the relationship side. That's something I really love. I love the conversations we get to have with people, professionally, personally. But really, if I were to boil it down, the favorite part of this job is being able to serve people. And some days it's easier than others, right? Some days it's easier to be a servant. But we've those of us who are in this office is we're serving. We're not looking to be served, but we're looking to serve. And whether that's serving our UIAAA partners and our ADs in our schools, whether that's serving our other partners, whether that's serving our student athletes. They're all of our number one focuses. We get to do little things each and every day that make a big impact on kids and their trajectories in their lives. And I mean, how cool is that, right? To think that one little thing that you might do today might inspire somebody to do something that's totally outside of what they thought was possible. I look at my own life. My golf coach at Moapa Valley, Brent Lewis, him going to our administration and saying, hey, I think John would really be a good PA announcer. We should give him a shot. That's one tiny thing. It was probably a 2-minute conversation, but that made all the difference in my life. And if I can help to provide just one of those moments for one kid in what I do, think about how big an impact that's going to have on generations of people going forward. And I'm not perfect in it. All of us aren't perfect in it, but focusing on that really makes you excited about the work that we do here.
Very good. I will mention, Rob will know this, so I need you to talk to Rob when we get off today.
Okay.
But the opening speaker at the recent national conference in Denver has a son who somewhat autistic. Everyone told him he would never graduate from high school. I mean, I'm shortening the story, but the whole time that he spoke about how one cook down at the Disney World Resort changed this kid's life. He's a college graduate. I mean, they've actually moved to Orlando. He actually works for Disney now. But you ask Rob about the apple pancake story, those here in Utah nationally will remember that. And that's exactly the type of thing you're talking about, because you just don't know if you might have been that impetus for someone else to continue on. So let's wrap this up now with a couple of questions. The first one being, from your perspective, and you work with ADs day in and day out, you're going to give a brand new AD, by brand new, I mean 1 to 4 years. You need to do these two things in order to be successful as an athletic director. What would those two things be?
Number one, I would try to get your hands on the book by Bill Walsh, Finding the Winning Edge. That would be, and it's an extremely hard book to get your hands on. And the reason I bring that book up is because there's so much about how being an administrator. Bill Walsh was the longtime head coach and general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. And he laid out the level of detail that he saw and worked through in the 49ers organization. And to me, that sets a tone for the level of attention to detail that you need to have to be a successful athletic administrator. Again, doesn't mean it's always going to go perfect. Doesn't mean people are always going to be perfect, but setting roles and setting processes early on is going to make a huge difference for you as an administrator. So if you can get your hands on that book or a book similar to it, I would really encourage you to do so. The second thing that I would really encourage ADs to do is to try to engage themselves in having conversations with people who they don't serve. You might say, well, how does that work? Like, why would an AD want to talk with a bunch of kids in a school who aren't student athletes? Well, these are the people a lot of times that we need to get involved in school communities. These are kids where we can make the most difference. And I think that also gives you an incredible empathy to listen to people that are different from you and to listen to people who maybe don't operate day to day in the same spaces that you're operating in. So I think by learning how to process and learning how to create good processes in your organization, but then also committing to trying to learn and discover and build relationships with people that you may not really interact with a whole lot, whether it's kids in your building, people in your community, people in your faith life, your personal life, whatever it may be. I think that gives you a good sense of how to navigate through large groups of people and jobs that are very high stress, that have a lot of personalities, and you learn a lot about empathy. You learn a lot about how to organize, and you learn a lot about how to serve others.
Johnny Thunder, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
The only question that you should have asked me, Hutch, is when we're going to ultimately at the UIAAA conference get a better draw in the Bago tournament, because I feel we kind of always have some tough draws. So,
well, I will talk to the current commissioner and see if I can make that happen. My question for you is, when are we able to do a broadcast? You can be the play-by-play and I'll do the color, even though I would be the rookie because I have never done that. But I think it would be fascinating to be on a high school football or basketball game and call the game with you.
You know what? Let's find a time and let's make it happen. I'm open to it as long as the schools involved know that I'm going to call the game down the middle and that I'm going to broadcast it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So you let me know the time and the place, my friend, and I will gladly be there.
Perfect. Well, thank you. That wraps it up for another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our host has been Johnny Thunder Oglesby, Certified Athletic Administrator and the Associate Director at the Utah High School Activities Association. Thanks for being on, John.
Hey, and thank you, Hutch. And one other thing I have to say, my title is actually Assistant Director. I didn't get a promotion recently.
Well, I got
the Associate Director in the office, but I'm just an assistant.
This is coming out, so when this is coming out, you can play it for Rob and say, "See, I'm the Associate Director." I like that. So,
oh boy! All right, thanks so much for having me, Hutch.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.